Vanessa stepped out onto the balcony of the grand house and watched as more and more people gathered for the holiday. This girl had always believed the world was a magical place and her life one endless party. Her parents pulled her away from her thoughts and dreams, and she reluctantly turned her head. Her dad and mom were very wealthy, and Vanessa had never questioned where it all came from. She simply adored her parents, who pampered her and never refused her anything. She had also never questioned who they really were until one day, it was too late. Unexpectedly, a fire broke out in the house. It spread rapidly, and people barely had time to escape. That evening, for the first time, the girl wondered if her parents had enemies or if they themselves were someone's enemies. In an instant, weapons appeared in the hands of Vanessa's father and mother. Her father urgently told the nanny to take Vanessa away. Barbara immediately grabbed the teenage girl and, closing her eyes, rushed past the burning sections of the house. She managed to save Vanessa, but it was all over for her parents that day. The girl was left alone. Tears streamed down her face, she couldn't believe they were gone. Barbara gently encouraged the orphan, promising that they could make her stronger even than her parents. Vanessa saw Barbara as powerful, not just in strength but in how she protected children in her care. Barbara told Vanessa she could also learn to protect children like her. At first, Vanessa didn't understand, she had just lost everything, but she trusted Barbara. So, she agreed to become her student. After that day, Vanessa spent the next 8 years at an Elite Nanny Academy, its location classified. Barbara Strike had taken her under her wing, raised her, and trained her. Now, Vanessa was much stronger. Barbara had become the director of the academy, and after years of lessons and training, Vanessa was finally ready for her first serious assignment. Shortly before Vanessa's visit, Barbara had been discussing a lucrative offer with a certain Mr. Paralan. The headmistress promised that with the proposed salary, they could offer the best employees, each with years of experience. But this particular client wanted someone special, someone who had never worked with anyone before. Barbara presented a list of employees next in line for first assignments. Mr. Paralan asked if they were all competent. The headmistress guaranteed that every graduate was proficient in early childhood development and psychology, as well as trained in first aid and self-defense. All employees could drive various vehicles and were trained in cybersecurity. Housekeeping, financial planning, and politics were also part of the curriculum. Then, Barbara asked why Mr. Paralan needed an elite nanny. Oscar Paralan recalled a conversation from 2 weeks ago with someone who admitted to failing their master and promised to make it right. But Oscar only wanted the ledgers, he was preparing to issue a bill to the guilty party. Then he said he'd call Jack, the man he was speaking to, when he needed his services. Right now, he just wanted more milk. Jack didn't quite understand, but Oscar clarified, his son Cody loved chocolate milk. Cody soon appeared, and Oscar noticed how nervous the boy seemed. But Cody took a bold stance and demanded a double portion from Jack due to his oversight. Oscar asked why he wasn't behaving quietly as promised, but Cody had his own requirements. Jack returned with a carton of milk, hands trembling. Oscar shouted that it was no longer needed, but Cody confirmed his order and grabbed the carton. Oscar picked up his son and was about to leave, still demanding milk. Back in Barbara's office, Oscar explained that the boy's mother was no longer around, and he needed someone to take care of the child. Barbara assured him the child would be in good hands and asked if he had a preference among the candidates. Oscar glanced at the folders and quickly pointed to Vanessa's file. For some reason, her resume caught his attention. He demanded that she be assigned to raise his son. Vanessa's specialty was cybersecurity, and Barbara asked if he had a large internet network at home. Upon hearing he didn't, she suggested someone else, one fluent in Italian, another skilled in self-defense, but Oscar refused to listen. He insisted on Vanessa. Barbara looked at him reproachfully but couldn't turn him down. He paid well. She called for Vanessa, who didn't take long to appear. Of course, the girl was nervous, this was her first assignment, but she believed she could do it. When she entered the office, Barbara stood with her back to her, slow to turn. Without facing her, she told Vanessa she had been offered a task. Vanessa, overjoyed, exclaimed she was ready, had been ready for a long time. Barbara interrupted. She hadn't chosen the task for Vanessa, someone else had. She explained that the client had chosen her personally. Going to the table, she pulled out a folder and announced the name, Oscar Paralan. Vanessa was stunned. She knew that name. It had been on the front page of the newspaper years ago. Paralan hit back. A mafia family. She was convinced they were involved in the fire that took her parents' lives. Barbara advised her not to take the assignment, reminding her she had the right to refuse. But Vanessa couldn't turn down her first mission, not after everything Barbara had done for her. Memories of the fire surged through her mind, and she still didn't know why it happened. She had long believed she'd never learn the truth, but now she had a chance. Barbara had promised to make her stronger, and now she was. Without hesitation, Vanessa declared she was ready to take the job. Barbara had her doubts, but Vanessa's resolve convinced her. The girl also considered that Mr. Paralan had a small child, an innocent. The child needed protection, and she was ready to provide it. She also hoped she might discover the truth behind her tragic past. Barbara met Mr. Paralan again and confirmed that the girl had signed the contract. Vanessa had already packed her suitcase and stood ready. As she arrived, Barbara called out Oscar's full name. He stood off to the side, avoiding eye contact. But he turned, and Vanessa saw the man she'd be working for. Oscar was young and strikingly handsome. She was caught off guard and forgot to greet him. Oscar broke the silence, asking Barbara whether the nanny could speak at all. Vanessa thought the question made him seem like an idiot. Then she extended her hand and introduced herself, saying she was pleased to meet and work for him. He returned the sentiment and told her to get in the car when she was ready. While he stepped away, Barbara pulled Vanessa aside to go over her duties. She reminded her not to reveal secrets, embarrass her employer, hack, or fall in love. Vanessa promised she would not let her mentor down. She already felt proud of herself as she headed to the car. The driver, Adam, greeted her and offered to load her suitcase. He found her cute and offered a bit of advice, not to let herself be scared. Cody was only 4 years old. Vanessa wasn't afraid of anything. She thanked him politely and got into the car. Inside, she saw Mr. Paralan with his son. She quickly greeted the boy, asking if he was Oscar's son. The child introduced himself as Cordell, but Oscar interjected everyone just called him Cody. Vanessa greeted him warmly, but Cody told his father he didn't trust her and that she smelled like oranges. Vanessa discreetly sniffed herself, confused. Then she asked where they were going. Cody jumped in, announcing they were headed to a large mansion in the City of Commoners. Oscar clarified they had recently moved from the south. Vanessa assumed that meant Chicago. She pulled out her laptop. Oscar told her there was Wi-Fi in the car and pointed out it had no password. Suddenly, Vanessa heard a click and noticed the lock on her door had dropped. Oscar explained they always drove with locked doors for safety. Vanessa disagreed. If something happened, unlocked doors were safer. She pressed the unlock button, but Oscar locked them again, explaining that if kidnappers tried to grab his son at a traffic light, it was safer this way. Vanessa saw his point and didn't argue. Cody leaned closer to her and asked if his father could also smell the oranges. Vanessa was distracted, thinking about the irony of having unsecured Wi-Fi while getting a lecture on security. Cody peeked at her laptop and asked what she was doing. Vanessa pressed a button, and the privacy window rolled down. Adam turned to ask what they needed. Nothing. Cody remarked that the new nanny was clever. Vanessa raised the window again and suggested to Oscar that he add a Wi-Fi password. He narrowed his eyes but agreed. Soon, they arrived at the mansion on the outskirts of Chicago. Adam told Vanessa to follow Oscar while he handled the luggage. Vanessa quickly took in the surroundings and was surprised: no guards, no cameras. Inside, Oscar told her that her room was on the second floor, second from the left. He explained to Cody that Vanessa would now be his main contact, but the boy protested he wanted to stay with his father. Oscar insisted that Cody should go to Vanessa for any questions. He didn't want his son getting involved in his business. But Cody was upset, thinking his father didn't believe in him. He grew furious, threw his drink on the floor, and ran out. Oscar explained it had been difficult for the boy since his mother's passing. Vanessa noted how attached the child was to his father. Then the girl asked if Cody knew what Oscar was really doing. In response, the man asked if Vanessa knew, and she immediately remembered the notes about his affairs. She admitted she had read some news but hadn't really delved into his business. Oscar, nevertheless, decided to be honest. He admitted that he was actually the deputy of the Paralan Mafia Don. Vanessa was well aware that being the right hand of the mafia head placed him nearly at the same level as the Don. Oscar went on to say he had more enemies than he could count and was sure they would do anything to get to his only son. Cody, as the heir to the Paralan name, was incredibly important. That, he said, was why he needed Vanessa to protect his child. The girl promised she would do everything necessary. This seemed to reassure Mr. Paralan. Vanessa immediately began to ask about her responsibilities and listed some things she could do involving cybersecurity, but Oscar told her it wasn't necessary. Her only task was Cody. She hadn't realized she'd be more of a nanny than anything else. She then brought up the fact that there were no bodyguards, and the staff should probably be checked. Oscar stepped closer and repeated that her only job was to keep an eye on his son. At that moment, Vanessa noticed a drink pouch Cody had thrown on the floor. Mr. Paralan added that since the boy had run off, she should go after him. Vanessa agreed and ran outside to look for the boy, but he was nowhere to be seen. Then she heard a quarrel, Cody's voice shouting. She turned and saw Cody being grabbed by masked men and pushed into the trunk of a van. Vanessa immediately gave chase, hoping to stop the kidnappers, but the van sped away too quickly. She stood there, watching the van disappear, horrified. Her very first day, and the child had been kidnapped. She turned to see Mr. Paralan standing in the doorway and panicked about how to tell him. For a moment she considered chasing the van again, but knew it would be useless. She ran back to the house to report. When she told him masked men had taken Cody, Oscar grabbed her by the arm and demanded they go after the car. Vanessa didn't hesitate, she also wanted to rescue Cody. Grabbing her bag, she asked for the keys, but Adam had already run over. He would be her driver and take her wherever she needed to go. Vanessa promised Oscar she would bring the boy back and told him to report the kidnapping to the police. But Oscar leaned in and said that wouldn't be necessary if she did her job right. The car peeled away at high speed in the direction the van had gone. Vanessa gave directions to Adam and opened her laptop, launching a program to track the van. She had memorized the license plate and was going to use her tools to locate it. Adam asked what she was doing, and Vanessa briefly explained her plan. She checked surveillance footage and confirmed the van had passed a nearby camera less than a minute ago. Everything seemed to be going too smoothly, she suspected it might be a trap. She gave more directions, left, then 2 traffic lights, then right. She began hacking into nearby cell towers for broader access. As she worked, she muttered to herself, prompting Adam to ask again what she was doing. Vanessa didn't stop. Soon she located 3 phone signals coming from a nearby building. When they arrived, she spotted the kidnappers' van parked outside. She instructed Adam to drive around the building and wait on the far side while she retrieved Cody. A bodyguard stood at the entrance, clearly trained, but strangely without a weapon. Vanessa approached and warned him she was trained and asked him to open the door peacefully. He leaned on it smugly and refused. Without waiting, Vanessa struck, bending her elbows sharply and delivering a hit to his solar plexus. As he doubled over, she followed with a swift strike to his neck. The towering man collapsed, dropping his sunglasses. Vanessa stepped over him and entered the building, finding herself in an empty kitchen. Grabbing a metal tray from a table, she armed herself. On the far side of the kitchen, she peered through a round window into a dimly lit hall. There stood a man and a woman, guarding a bound Cody. Without hesitation, Vanessa slammed open the door and stormed in. The two thugs took fighting stances. Vanessa swung the tray at the man, who ducked. He swung at her, but she blocked with the tray, causing him pain. While he recoiled, she aimed a heel kick to his face, but he blocked it and prepared to retaliate. Before he could strike, Vanessa smashed the tray over his head. While both assailants staggered, she ran to Cody, scooped him up, still tied, and fled the building. Outside, Adam cheered as she approached with the boy. Vanessa placed Cody in the car and hugged him tightly, then began to untie him, asking if he was hurt. The boy sat silently, bent forward, and Vanessa remembered sitting just like that after the fire that destroyed her home. She hugged him again and promised he was safe now. Then Adam coughed. Vanessa noticed he looked unwell and grew concerned until she saw a gun in his hand, pointed at her. Adam coldly told her to get out of the car. He ordered her to walk away, leaving the child, and offered her $2 million in exchange. Vanessa realized with horror that Adam was working with the kidnappers, or rather, he was part of something bigger. He clarified that he wasn't associated with the low-level goons Oscar had hired to test her. Vanessa understood now this had been a setup. Adam added that the boy had never been out of Oscar's sight and that now was the perfect moment to complete the test. Vanessa placed herself between Cody and the gun. She said she would never let Adam carry out his plan. He urged her to be smart and take the money rather than end up with a bullet in her head. Out of the corner of her eye, Vanessa saw her open laptop. She kept talking to distract Adam while slowly reaching for the device. Her fingers searched for the right button. When she refused again, Adam prepared to pull the trigger. At last, Vanessa pressed a button. The windshield wipers squeaked across the glass, catching Adam's attention. While he turned, she pressed another key. The privacy screen between driver and passengers rose suddenly and jammed Adam's hand, making him drop the gun. Seizing the opportunity, Vanessa pushed the car door open and fell backward, holding Cody close to shield him. She landed on her back, protecting the boy. Then she got up and ran, Cody in her arms, not looking back. She whispered reassurances to the child as she ran, that they'd be home soon, that he had been very brave. Approaching the house, she saw Adam's car already parked in the yard. Panic rose inside her. What if he had already returned and was lying? Then she saw Adam standing calmly next to Mr. Paralan, acting like nothing had happened. Cody wriggled from her arms and ran to his father. Vanessa stood frozen, realizing something was deeply wrong. Oscar patted his son on the head, praised Vanessa for doing an excellent job, and told her she was hired. In that moment, Vanessa understood every part of the encounter, even Adam's betrayal, had been part of the test. But he was just doing his job. Mr. Paralan remarked that he wasn't doing it very well, considering Vanessa had escaped before he pulled the trigger. The girl, although still a little angry, repeated that the doors in the car should not be locked for this very reason. Oscar agreed, and Cody even began to praise her for being fast. He hugged her tightly. Vanessa realized that Oscar had involved his son in a dangerous situation, but at the same time, he couldn't warn Cody. Doing so might have left the boy with psychological trauma. Oscar had wanted to test whether Vanessa could be intimidated or bribed, and he was satisfied with the result. He explained that previous nannies had failed similar tests. Vanessa promised to keep a close eye on Cody but asked Oscar to trust her. He refused. He didn't trust anyone. When Vanessa asked why, he admitted that his wife had disappeared a year ago. Then he pulled a small, blood-stained wedding ring from his pocket, the size fit for a woman. He added that the police had failed to report the truth. His wife had been murdered. Oscar's face darkened with grief. He even closed his eyes, overcome by the memory. Vanessa noticed how little Cody lowered his eyes, embarrassed and saddened by his father's pain. She gently asked Oscar not to talk about it now, since the moment wasn't right. Oscar understood what she meant and asked his son to return to his room. But Cody objected, saying he was fine and didn't want to go back. Vanessa glanced at the windows and asked which one was Cody's room. The boy frowned, not understanding why she wanted to know. Vanessa joked that it was probably the one with lace curtains. Cody grumbled that it wasn't, and Oscar clarified that his room was on the opposite side of the house. Vanessa guessed again, the one with flower pots. The boy groaned and dragged her by the arm, insisting on showing her himself. Before she left, Oscar reminded Vanessa to come to his office in 10 minutes. She nodded and followed Cody, with Oscar watching them go. Adam, standing nearby, commented that he liked Vanessa and warned Oscar not to scare her off. But Oscar believed that if Vanessa could be scared, then she didn't belong there in the first place. As they walked, Cody suspected that Vanessa had lied just to get into his room. She explained that she wanted to see where he lived to understand him better. This surprised Cody, no one had said that to him before. Vanessa was worried, too. Cody had handled his kidnapping far too well, and she was glad it didn't seem to affect him deeply. When they arrived, Cody explained the room hadn't been cleaned yet since they had only recently moved in. Some things were still left from the previous owners, children's things. Vanessa actually liked that. She told Cody he didn't have to show her anything if he didn't want to, but he shrugged and said it was just a room. Inside, the space was large and messy. Empty chocolate milk cartons were everywhere. Vanessa also noticed dozens of identical costumes, more than an undertaker might need. In one corner was a creative station, full of paints and paper. Vanessa thought he needed to cut back on sugar and maybe expand his wardrobe. As she looked around, Cody quickly hid some toys under a pillow, clearly embarrassed. He explained that the maid didn't like him much. Vanessa smiled gently, unsure how that could be. He was wonderful. She reached out to stroke his hair, but he pulled away and told her sharply that he didn't need a new mother. Vanessa didn't try again. She understood that no one could replace his mother. She told him she could stop caring if he didn't want her to, but he simply replied that she should just do her job. Vanessa played along, agreeing to follow his orders. Then he reminded her she needed to go see his father. Vanessa realized it was time and headed for Oscar's office. On the way, she reflected on how stubborn the boy was, but also how understandable that was. At the office door, she knocked lightly. Oscar invited her in. This time, Vanessa noticed he seemed different. In this setting, he didn't look like the deputy of a mafia don, just a man trying to protect his family. She informed him that Cody was in his room and asked if that was safe. Oscar replied that as long as the boy was in the house, it was safe. He admitted that he had pressured Vanessa earlier, but she told him she didn't mind. She promised to get to the bottom of everything, no matter the cost. She believed that the same people who killed Mrs. Paralan were now targeting Cody, and she was determined to protect him. Oscar confirmed that the threats had begun when his uncle, the mafia don, declared Cody as his successor. Vanessa pointed out that her contract hadn't mentioned anything about family threats. She added that such obligations weren't part of her original terms. Realizing Oscar probably hadn't read the fine print, Vanessa decided to use it as leverage. Oscar remembered she had self-defense training. Vanessa, however, reminded him she was freshly graduated. He should have chosen someone more experienced. But Oscar insisted he had hired exactly who he needed. Vanessa paused, unsure what he meant. Did he know about her past? Had he guessed she was here for answers? But Oscar only said he didn't want anyone else. He asked her what conditions she needed to stay. Vanessa realized this task was much bigger than expected. Oscar began offering compensation, increased pay, a house in Mallorca, political connections. Vanessa dismissed them. None of it mattered if she failed. Then she asked for full access to everything she needed. Oscar asked her to clarify. She said absolutely everything, insisting it was necessary to protect Cody. He was intrigued by her request. Her dedication struck him as selfless, but Vanessa corrected him, she just wanted to survive the mission. Oscar said there were some things he couldn't share, like business accounts or client data. Vanessa promised she didn't care about his criminal dealings. She wouldn't look where she didn't need to. The conversation started to amuse Oscar. He asked again what she hoped to gain from all this. Vanessa replied with a personal request, a glowing review. She was risking her life for Cody, and if everything went well, she wanted her work to be appreciated. She also asked that Oscar become the top patron of the Elite Nanny Academy. Oscar considered her request and found it modest. He promised to do it in a year when they left Chicago. But then he turned serious. He warned her that if anything happened to his son, things would be very different. Vanessa would regret not dying during her mission. Though she was not a fearful person, Oscar's threat chilled her. His face was so stern she thought he might hit her, but he didn't. He simply told her to make herself at home. Leaving the office, Vanessa knew he meant what he said. She could see it in his eyes, he wouldn't hesitate to kill her if she failed. But she reminded herself, elite nannies never make mistakes. In the hallway, she found Adam dragging her suitcase upstairs. She could have carried it herself, but Adam told her she'd been through enough. He was glad she was staying. He invited her to inspect the house after all. It would be her home for the next year, unless something irreversible happened. Vanessa couldn't tell whose side Adam was really on, but she followed his suggestion. The house felt like a palace. She walked out to the garden to check the security. Near the fence, she spotted a familiar face, the guard she had knocked unconscious during the rescue. She realized he must have faked it. The fence was 3 meters high, topped with barbed wire. She saw more guards patrolling, huge men like the first one. There were fountains and elegant features, but the space Cody played in didn't seem child-friendly. Vanessa decided she would take him to a proper park sometime. Back inside, she searched for her room. It was spacious and nicely furnished, but luxury wasn't on her mind. She needed to charge her laptop. But when she opened her bag, she froze, it was missing. She retraced her steps and realized she had left it in the car when she jumped out with Cody. Looking out the window, she hoped to grab it right away, but the car was gone. Oscar came into the room and invited her to dinner. Vanessa immediately asked about the laptop, and he promised Adam would retrieve it. She then asked about Cody and was told the boy would be dining in his room tonight. Vanessa wondered how often Cody ate alone. Oscar said he had been doing so a lot lately. She suggested it was due to his mother's death, but Oscar turned on her sharply. He didn't want her opinions on his son's emotions. He reminded her that her only concern was the boy's safety. At that moment, Cody stood outside the door, trying to eavesdrop. Vanessa heard the rustling. Oscar didn't notice and walked away. Vanessa realized Cody had heard everything, and it upset her. He was still just a child. She made her way to the dining room and was shown to a massive table. There was a ridiculous amount of food. Though she was hungry, it felt excessive. Mr. Paralan sat across from her, ready to eat. While looking at her, the girl, trained in etiquette, still felt a little uncomfortable. At the academy, she had been taught the art of small talk with employers, so she decided to initiate a conversation. Vanessa asked what had brought Mr. Paralan to Chicago. When he replied that it was just business, she found it a little strange. He wasn't part of the local mafia, and that particular syndicate had no influence here. She also knew the local families would not welcome outside interference. Vanessa suggested that a man with Oscar's status could make a lot of noise in the city. Her employer agreed in a calm tone, acknowledging the truth in her words. The nanny noticed that Oscar didn't seem to feel remorse. It was as if he didn't realize the level of risk he was exposing his son to. She kept the conversation going and asked about Oscar's goals for the coming year. He didn't quite understand the question, so Vanessa clarified if there were no major plans, perhaps she could teach Cody a language or the arts. Oscar hesitated. It seemed like he had thought about it before. He admitted that Cody needed to learn something useful, but also stressed that, as the heir to the Paralan family, he had certain expectations to meet. The door to the dining room opened, and a maid entered with a drink. Vanessa found the timing strange and suspicious. Everyone here seemed like shadows, and she had only really interacted with the driver. It was also odd that she was the only one invited to dinner with the boss. Still, she assumed it was a gesture for her first day and decided to go along with it. She asked what Cody usually did during the day and was surprised to hear that his father often took him to work. Vanessa didn't think that was suitable and declared that it would no longer happen. At that, she noticed Oscar's mood shift, his jaw tightened, and his fists clenched. Mr. Paralan ordered the maid, Julia, to leave and indicated he wanted to clarify something. Vanessa caught a strange look in the maid's eyes, reaffirming her feeling that something was off. Oscar rose and asked her to follow him. Vanessa wanted to ask a question, but he told her not to say another word.